All right. We are officially recording.
Great. Everyone, we're going to get started in just 1 minute. All right. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. I'm Amy Ginden. I'm the Director of Account Management and Digital Marketing at Magnitude Consulting. And I'm here today with one of my favorite colleagues, Caitlin Meller. Caitlin leads business development at Magnitude, and she's been helping businesses across the tech and services ecosystems increase their revenue through great marketing for over a decade. Just a little housekeeping before we dive into today's discussion and Caitlin introduces herself. The second half of our time together will be dedicated to your questions. So feel free to click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen at any point to ask your questions, and we will get to as many as we have time for today. So with that said, I will pass it over to you, Caitlin.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to have you all here today. I know that I feel like time during COVID is so valuable, so really do appreciate you spending time with us here this morning. So just a little bit of background on Magnitude. We are a full service B2B marketing agency. We specialize in the cybersecurity, tech, and services ecosystems. And that's all we'll say about what we do at Magnitude for the day. Over the course of the 8-year journey that we've had as a company, we've been very fortunate to work with 73 B2B companies directly and a whole heck of a lot more indirectly through partnerships and such, but working with them to leverage marketing the right way to drive their growth. So what we did for this presentation is we did an analysis of all of those engagements. And this is really the result of that. We kind of took a step back and said, what can we learn and what can we share from all of those, all of the clients we've had in the past? Okay. So speaking of data, we'll start with this survey that we did. So we surveyed our network, so via email and social media. And we asked them, what's your biggest marketing priority in 2021? And the results, frankly, aren't surprising, but I think they have some ramifications for you. So demand gen, as you can see, is number one here. So 43% of companies believe this is their biggest marketing priority in 2021. Not surprising. The downside here, though, for you is that there's going to be more competition in the top marketing channels. So you'll have to get really creative to find the white space when you're doing demand gen. So what does that mean? Better targeting, better messaging, smarter offers, new go-to-market partnerships, for instance. So something to think about as you're thinking about demand gen for the year. So coming in second is strategy and positioning, which of course we love because I feel like this is always an area that people spend a little while on and then come back to, every once in a while. But this area is being a big focus this year, I think, is of course because of COVID. I think some companies have had some extra time this year to step back and strategize because they're not as busy. So we've seen a lot of companies come to us because, they have some extra time on their hands and they can actually focus on their strategy. Where do they want to make investments? Others have had to do that really because they need to in order to compete. And I would say everybody really has to right now. But definitely spend your time here. Strategy and positioning, everybody's doing it, frankly. A third of the companies are making this their biggest marketing priority in 2021, but everybody's doing it. So do this to make sure that you're deploying your resources really effectively. And then content generation and sales enablement being the other two focus areas for companies. These are really, top supporting strategies to attract new leads and drive sales. There's additional competition here as well. So especially in digital, right? That makes your value propositions, they have to be hard hitting this year, really. And you need to do that in order to differentiate. Spend time there. Okay. So we wanted to start there to give you a sense of what other folks are thinking are their top priorities. But frankly, this year, more than ever, demand gen for growing companies, SMBs, small and medium businesses, is challenging. You've got a limited budget, made probably more limited this year. You've got limited resources, same story there. Your customers don't want to be sold to. And differentiating from the pack when you're a growing company requires creativity, expertise, and commitment. And that's an area, commitment is an area that I think a lot of growing companies don't want to do with marketing. They want to say, okay, I'm going to spend time on marketing for 3 months and think that, I'm going to have results. You really have to make the investment in marketing for, a fair bit of time, much longer than 3 months to see that, to see the results. And then layer on to the fact that we're in the middle of a global pandemic right now. And that means marketing's on the hook for results in a way that we never have been before. And that's awesome. That's really exciting for us marketers out there. But marketing can be the great equalizer, right? So demand gen's hard, but marketing, especially because of digital marketing these days, it's never been such a great equalizer. It levels the playing field for us. Done the right way, you can compete against the big guys because you've got the same tools that they have. There was a time where we'd go to conferences and the big companies would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their booth, and it would be flashy, and you can't compete against that. But now that we're all on digital, you just have to make sure that you're doing the right things, spending your money in the right ways. We've got a lot of ideas around that. So one company that I think is doing this really well is Drift. Think about the fact they're like 130 employees, but you would never know it thinking about like all the things that they do with their marketing. It's very sophisticated. Their programs are really smart. Their brand awareness is amazing. So it's definitely possible for marketing to be your way to compete against the big guys. So before I get to the 5 things that you can do from a marketing perspective to drive sales, I want to share what I think many of you frankly came here for, which is what tactics are working across our entire client base right now. So these are the 6 things that we're doing across many of our clients right now. Some are using all of them, some are using just 1 or 2, but this is what's working from a marketing perspective. And frankly, you would think like COVID has changed this a lot, but it kind of hasn't. This is really, I think it's dialed up certain areas and maybe dialed back others, but this is really what's kind of always worked. So I'll dig in a little bit here. Ads, smart, highly targeted paid ads. Getting really targeted with paid ads on LinkedIn and Google AdWords is an awesome marketing strategy for right now. This is really awesome if you want to get leads into the funnel quickly. We've had people say, I have an empty funnel. Okay, this is probably one of the strategies that we would recommend for them. Our clients are typically spending somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000 on paid ads if they're doing it. And some are a little bit lower than that, and some go higher. Some are up to 6,000 and more, but we're only dialing that up once we're seeing the results, right? We don't want to spend unless there's ROI there. Number 2, social selling. So using LinkedIn to engage your network, stay top of mind, make new connections, and sell. It works. Number 3, content. So all of our clients are doing great content. Everyone's in front of their computers more than ever. content's being seen more, but you have to make sure that your audience will find real value in that content. It has to be very targeted and unique in order for them to want to open it and spend their time reading it or watching it. Number 4, customer care programs. For some reason, this is like an area that seems to fall by the wayside for a lot of our clients, and I'm not really sure why. Your clients are your best customers, right? They've already bought into your value proposition. It's easier to sell to them. So what kind of programs can you create to either upsell or cross-sell or provide more value for your customers so they want to make referrals for you, things like that. This is an area that really works. Number 5, maximizing and growing the channel. So I understand that not everyone on this webinar is going to sell through the channel, but for those that do, this has been a very excellent tactic for a number of our clients. Analyzing your channel and figuring out where to focus and with what programs totally works. One of our clients just had their best quarter ever by focusing on this. It wasn't something that they really focused on before, but now they do. And then number 6, digital events. So they're working. You may have to fight to get the attendance that you want. You might have to get a little bit creative, but people still want to learn. They want to engage and connect with other people. So we've got the numbers across our clients to prove that this is working. So I figured we'd start there because I feel like whenever people say like, what's working, what's working from a marketing perspective, they want us to tell them tactics. So these are the things, these are the strategies and the tactics that are working across our client base. But in order to really be able to do these right, you have to do these 5 things from a marketing perspective. They're more foundational, but they're still very important. So let's go to those. So number 1, never say, I don't need a strategy. Amy's smiling right now because we hear this more often than we'd like to. A lot of our clients, they just want to skip right to the like hands-on, get it done. Let me tell you, you can spend a lot of money and not impact sales at all. So don't throw money at the problem. Like the idea of not needing a strategy is often the view of leadership. It's not so much the sales and marketing people. I feel like we get it. Like we get that you need to have a strategy in place. Like I always like to say, if you were a product person, would you tell your CTO not to have a product roadmap? Like, no. So then why are we as marketers asked to not have a strategy and just go do a paid ad program? It's like, well, what are we aiming for here? What's our goal with this? So I have a client that does really well with this. They're a services firm. They made an investment in developing a really good strategy up front. What they did is we kind of reworked their brand. They're an awesome company, but they just didn't have the brand awareness that they wanted. And so we reworked their brand, we redid their website, we did a full analysis of their market to figure out where do they play, what's their differentiation, how should they talk about themselves, and created a new website for them. And their strategy ended up being very vertical focused. So they go after certain, they play in different verticals. Fintech and biopharma, for instance. And this is how the entire team rallied around this vertical focus strategy. And it's actually also how the sales team was then built out and staffed. But every one of our marketing decisions ties back into this business goal. Like, which one of these verticals are we focused on? Which one are we trying to grow? Is this, a content piece, for instance, that speaks to all of the verticals that we serve? But at the end of the day, they know that every decision they make from a marketing perspective needs to tie back to business goals. Number 2, this is going to be hard for some of my salespeople on the call, but rely on marketing beyond just filling the funnel. So a lot of growing businesses are so focused on filling the top of the funnel that they miss like all these awesome broader benefits of marketing. It ends up being like tactically focused versus strategic. Again, why we started with tactics here. So there's so many benefits. So I'm going to name a few. Number one, helping sales cross-sell or upsell. Number two, positioning for investment or acquisition, penetrating new markets, new segments, new verticals, retention, social selling. Like there's a million different benefits of marketing beyond just being, helping sales. Think of marketing as a business growth driver, not sales support. I think that's the key difference here in understanding the power, the true power of marketing. So I'll give you an example of how this played out for one of our clients. They're a cybersecurity analytics company, and they were looking to level up the company's profile in order to get acquired. And they had a CEO who really believed in the power of great marketing. He really knew that this could be a differentiator for them. So what we did is we reworked their messaging. We redid their website. We did sales collateral for them. We reworked their presence at events. We built out partner relationships for them. We did PR. So we were literally running on all cylinders here from a marketing perspective. And the sales team, as a result, was getting leads from all of these different sides, email, from media inquiries, things like that. It was coming from everywhere because we were everywhere. And while the goal was to position themselves for acquisition, we were really driving sales as a result. So I'm happy to say that within a year, they were actually acquired by Canon. Okay, number three, get the plumbing right. This is really about your systems and your data. Do you have the right visibility into what's happening from a marketing perspective? Because bad data incapacitates us as marketers. We're making decisions based on the wrong information. I know it may surprise some people out there, but very little about marketing is gut. It's numbers, it's analysis, it's testing, it's figuring out what's actually working, and where should we scale up based on the results that we're seeing. So I will say, you will never be able to drive growth at scale unless you get this piece right. I know that's a kind of a very firm statement and edgy a bit, but it's true. You're not going to be able to drive growth because you can't drive growth at scale, because this is such an important piece of the puzzle. And I'm not saying you need the Ferrari version of this. Like, it's fine to have the Ford. If you want to put in a number of free systems, they're out there. HubSpot's got a free CRM, for instance, MailChimp for email marketing. There's so many different things that you could do, so you don't have to invest in the actual system itself a ton. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure they all talk to each other, and they're set up to speak to each other and to learn from each other. So I will say a lot of the people we work with struggle with this. When I started to say, who should I use as an example here? I really couldn't find one, sadly, because I think I think the reason that so many companies struggle with this is because they don't put this as like a line item in their budget as for time, not particularly like the cost of it, but the time of it more than anything. They think that this is just, they make one investment in it and they're done. It's work to get here, to get to a place where your plumbing is right. It requires a real dissection of the process, developing a closed loop with sales. But the beauty of it is, once you're done, you push a button and you know exactly what program from a marketing perspective translates to revenue. And that's the magic right there. So this isn't a one and done kind of thing, though. I will say, put this as a line item in your budget. It is not one and done. What you'll want to do is, you might want to change your lead scoring down the road. You might want to upgrade one of your systems. You might want to add a new feature. So get the plumbing right. It's very important. Number 4, outsource as a way of life carefully. So I'm not sure why this is, but for a lot of growing businesses, there's a lot of misconceptions around the cost benefit of hiring in-house versus outsourcing. So let me tell you, you don't need to create a team in-house right this second. Figure out where your gaps are and fill them. Frankly, like, we wouldn't have been in business if this wasn't an economical model, right? We're an outsourced marketing agency. Growing companies look to us because it's a smart business decision for them. I'll say for us, we outsource our outbound sales. We partner with an outsourced SDR firm, who's awesome, by the way, to do outbound sales for us. So we're filling the funnel from an inbound perspective and also from an outbound perspective. And that outsourcing carefully, by the way, choosing a really smart partner is a huge benefit for our company. But a couple things to think about if you're thinking about outsourcing. Number 1, make sure you're buttoned up enough internally before you outsource. So you want to make sure that they're successful. Make sure you've got alignment with your team, that you know what the goal is of bringing that company on or that person on. Because if you don't, I've seen instances where the CEO and the VP of marketing are completely not aligned with what they want the marketing agency to be supporting them with. And that's really hard for us. It ends up being, we're climbing an uphill battle. We can't spend our hours on doing the things that support your business growth. Instead, we're helping you gain that internal alignment. The second is choose really carefully here, because you don't want to bear the burden of pulling all these disparate pieces together if you choose, lots of different companies to support you. So for instance, one of our clients is a network security company. We were brought in because they were going through a pivot, and we found out their marketing director had an SEO firm, a content writer, a PR person, and an events company. And so she was literally spending all of her time managing these relationships versus doing what she really loved to do, which was marketing. So choose partners who bring that strategic lens to the table and who aren't siloed. And then number 5, know that it takes patience to maximize your returns. We as marketers, we learn really quickly because we have to, right? But good marketing does take time to see results. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but like, our ethos at Magnitude is test, optimize, scale. But in order to do that, you really have to have the patience to see something through. You're not going to get results right this second, but they might, and it's not going to be 6 months. It's probably somewhere in between. I will say a word of advice here: don't wait until things are in a crisis. I feel like I had a sales call a couple of weeks ago where the person said to us, my funnel's empty. Can you help us? And it's like, sure, but it would have probably been a more productive conversation if you had come to us a couple of weeks ago. Now, there's a lot of pressure for you and for us. I feel like by the time a lot of people end up, deciding to work with an agency or, deciding to get marketing help, they have no patience because they need results right now. So make sure you keep your eye on the economics of your marketing investment. Measure success on results versus activity. So I'll give you an example of how this all played out with one of our clients. They're a tech company, and we were running an ad to marketers, salespeople, and RevOps people. And it was a LinkedIn ad, for instance, by the way. So people were clicking the ad, but as soon as they got to our landing page, they weren't converting. So what we knew based on that, we were getting a lot of clicks from the right people. So we knew the targets were right. We knew the message was right. We knew the copy was great because they were clicking in. All of these things were right. But as soon as they landed on the landing page, the offer wasn't good. They didn't want what we were offering. So we changed the offer, and then leads started coming in. And that's when we dialed up the budget, because we knew then it was working. So allow yourself enough time to learn something and spend when you have results. Okay, Amy, over to you. Do we have any questions?
Well, we have a few questions that have come in, so thank you. If anyone else has any questions, again, feel free to use the Q&A button and we will get to you. The first question is around whether people are experiencing webinar fatigue. And I love this question because the answer is yes and no. Obviously, when COVID hit and we were all immediately remote, there was a huge push for webinars and other sorts of virtual events to connect. And there was also a huge uptick. So back in the spring, I read a statistic that I think like 76% of people who registered for webinars actually attended. And then in the summer, it went back down to sort of that average of around 50%, which is what it was pre-COVID typically in our industries. And so I think what's happening is we're all desperate to connect, but we need to find creative ways to stay in front of each other. And so whether that's a creative webinar topic or whether that's looking into other technology platforms, we have a client that's doing a wine tasting, we have a client that's doing a networking event. There are other platforms out there that you can look into outside of Zoom or GoToWebinar that can really be beneficial and really create that connection that you're looking for without necessarily sort of that one-way format that often webinars can be. Great. So another question, Caitlin, I think this one is for you. How much should we be investing in our marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say a lot of companies that we work with spend, growing companies spend between 4 and 8% of their revenue on marketing. So many kind of start at the 4%, and then once they're seeing those results move up to 8%, there's certainly some folks that are kind of on either end of that spectrum. Higher end, some are spending 15, for instance, and some are spending 2%. But I would say 4 and 8% is typically where our clients are. And I would say, for a startup, for instance, like a startup really has to spend regardless of their revenues, because they need to get their word out there. So that's an investment they have to make no matter what. But that's that's hopefully a good benchmark for people.
Great. Another question that came in is about what do I do if I need leads tomorrow? And I think, Caitlin, you touched upon this earlier, but I really think that it comes down to developing a digital advertising strategy and figuring out which channels are going to get you there and how much budget you need. As Caitlin mentioned, ads don't result in great leads overnight. You really need to understand kind of where you should be and what your message is and what your offer is and your budget. But I will say, Google AdWords is great for companies who are in a competitive market and it's crowded and people are searching for what you do. it's really going to come down to how expensive your keywords are and how much your competitors are spending. SpyFu, for those of you who are marketers on the call, is a great tool that we use. And it gives you all of the competitive data on Google AdWords, what your competitors are spending and what their ads are and what keywords they're bidding on. I think LinkedIn advertising, the advantage is that you really know who you're getting in front of. But it can often be better for more front of the funnel leads that require a little bit more nurturing over time in order for them to kind of feel ready to have a conversation with you. It's more of a conversation starter than it is sort of sealing the deal. Great. So another question, Caitlin, I think this one might be for you. How do you invest in content so that it produces quality leads, not just spend a bunch of money on fluffy blog posts?
I love that question. I think that's an awesome question. Honestly, I would say the fluffy blog posts do have their benefit. When you write a good, I wouldn't call it a fluffy blog post, by the way. I don't think we've ever written a fluffy blog post ever, but blog posts are beneficial because they're driving traffic to your site, and the more smart keywords that you're using, the more really good content that you're doing, the more kind of targeted like blogs you're writing, the more people will end up on your site. And like what we've seen is as our clients continue to invest in content on a regular basis, the more that they write, 1 or 2 blogs every month, the traffic on their website just continues to rise. So one of our clients recently went from, I think it was like 3,000 visitors a month, maybe two or 3 years ago, to now they're getting 15,000 a month. So those numbers, if you have the right content on your site, you're getting more conversions. I think that those numbers might actually be higher than what I'm saying, actually. But so there is benefit to blogs. I would say what we like to do is think about content content to drive sales. We like to think about it from an intent perspective. So like if you're going to spend money on an ebook, and put it in an ad, or send it out via email, whatever you're going to do with it, and somebody's going to download it, you want to make sure that when somebody downloads that, that's an indicator that they're interested in working with you. So for instance, if you are writing a piece about how this is completely arbitrary, by the way, but like what kind of cats should I buy as my first cat purchase? I'm thinking about this because Amy just bought a cat, 2 cats actually. That's one thing. That's an interesting blog, right? But if you wrote what are the 10 best places to buy cats from? That those people are actually looking to buy a cat. So for us, the way that translates, like, again, that's a kind of a silly example, but for us, that translates to when we write an ebook, we want to make sure if somebody's downloading that ebook, that means they're interested in working with us. So if we're going to spend the money on that, we like to make sure that's what we call intent-based. So it says, the 10 things that you need to know, the 10 things you should look for in your marketing partner, for instance. Or, the CEO's guide to budgeting and planning, which, by the way, we are currently writing, to prepare for, your 2021 marketing strategy. That one may not be as intent-based, but you get my flavor. Like if somebody's downloading it, that means they're looking for your service, and that makes a really good lead for you to follow up with.
Yeah, and just to add, I think there's a balance between being self-promotional in your content and being a thought leader. If someone doesn't know your brand, it's really important to get your thought leadership out there and show your expertise. And then as people get to the point where they're considering a vendor, your services, your product, that's when you can really highlight your differentiators. So there is value in the fluffy blog posts as well as the more intent-based content that Caitlin is referring to.
Yeah.
Last chance for questions. I think that was all we had. No? Okay, great. Caitlin, do you want to wrap us up?
Sure. So thank you for coming today. I think hopefully this was a good use of your time. Please connect with me and Amy on LinkedIn. We always like new friends. These are our LinkedIn URLs, and then drop us a note. I've got 2 really good ebooks that we could share. So one is this B2B marketing, budgeting, and planning for CEOs. We've made this, we wrote this a couple of years ago, and then we changed it for the pandemic. We've made some updates to make it more relevant now. So we can send you that. That'll probably be ready towards the end of this week. But we'll send it as soon as you're ready if you want to just drop us a note. And then we have another ebook, which is ready now. It's called 11 Clever Ways to Connect Better in Uncertain Times. And it's got a bunch of really cool ideas that we've either drawn from some of the people that we draw inspiration from a marketing perspective, or that we've created for our clients. So we're very happy to share either of those, and hopefully they'll be helpful for you. But thanks again for coming, and hopefully you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.